agenda. Joining us now to talk about this and more is Republican Congressman Tom Cole. He is the House Deputy Whip. Good morning, Congressman.
Morning.
The president's son-in-law and top advisor, Jared Kushner, is reportedly now being looked at by federal investigators. Do you think this is getting in the way of the president's legislative agenda?
Well, frankly, we're moving legislatively pretty rapidly. We've actually passed more legislation in the opening 120 or 30 days of the administration than the last previous 6 presidents. So we're clearly doing things. On the other hand, would you like to be talking about this? No. But I applaud Mr. Kushner because, frankly, he's been very forthcoming. He's offered to testify. I'm sure he's cooperating fully. So, again, we hope the investigation proceeds and is done professionally and over quickly. But, again, I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out that there's not much there, so to speak, in terms of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
But how concerned are you that this seems to have moved from the campaign now to the Oval Office, frankly?
Well, of course, you're always concerned. You would prefer that this not be happening. But, again, the appropriate authorities are in charge. Look, it was the Deputy Attorney General of this administration that made the decision to appoint a special counsel. That special counsel is a very widely respected person, a professional, a former FBI director. So, again, there's 3 congressional investigations going on. So, again, would you like to have this? No. Does it stop legislation? It has not.
Let's talk about the House health care bill. You voted for it. The CBO score is now out. They believe that 23 million fewer people will be covered over the course of the next decade. Are you concerned?
Well, I look at CBO numbers as informative but not definitive. Frankly, they're quite often wrong. And in this case, many of their judgments are, I think, in my view, suspect, which are people will literally leave Medicare or Medicaid, excuse me, rather than stay on. And again, at the end of the day, most of these are voluntary decisions. That is not people being kicked off health care, but people deciding that the Obamacare system or the federal health care system is not where they want to be. So that's point one. Point two, frankly, is I don't worry about any of this stuff too much until we see what the Senate does. Because, a bill out of one chamber is not law of the land. The Senate will do something very different. Then we'll go to conference, and I think that's when it gets very serious, because then you're bargaining between both the House and the Senate to try and put a bill on the president's desk. So right now, it's like pulling up a plant and judging its growth by looking at the roots every day. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Let the process work, and let's see where we end up.
I understand, but constituents seem to already be judging it on the face of the House plan. I mean, this is based on the town halls. You hear their anger
I think there's been a pretty systematic effort to misinform constituents that this is the final product, and that's fair enough. Look, this is politics. It's not for the faint of heart. But at the end of the day, it'll be the ultimate legislation, I think, where public opinion is formed. So, you have to fight through these things. And if you believe in something, and this bill in my state is much better than the current system, where we're down to a single provider. It's losing money. We have a rate hike of 69%. And since we're a non-Medicaid expansion state, we're taking care of patients in hospitals that we're not being compensated for that 31 other states are. So our bill addresses those things. So it's pretty easy for me, at least at home, to defend the bill that we've got.
Well, let's talk about the pre-existing conditions, because this seems to be what constituents have fixated on, because they're very concerned about it. Here's what the CBO says. Over time, it would become more difficult for less healthy people, including people with pre-existing medical conditions, in those states to purchase insurance because their premiums would continue to increase rapidly. So it's not misinformation that the constituents are hanging their hats on.
Look, the CBO has a point of view. It's quite often wrong. It was wrong about the Bush tax cuts. It's wrong about Medicare Part D. I think in this case it's wrong again. But the idea that we're not taking care of pre-existing conditions isn't true. I mean, it's in the legislation, and frankly, then you would need a waiver at the state level, which means your governor and your state legislature would have to do, and they have to meet very stringent conditions. So, again, I think this is something pulled out of context and exploited for political purposes. And, again, I don't complain about it because it's just a reality of politics. But pre-existing conditions will continue to be covered.
I just want to show you the latest Fox News poll out just yesterday or this week. 53% opposed the GOP bill that passed the House to replace Obamacare. 53% of the country now feels Obamacare has been, quote, mostly a good thing for the country. So you must be hoping for some pretty big changes.
Well, changes happen. Obviously, most of the country hasn't felt Obamacare was very good, or the Democrats wouldn't have lost the majority, or certainly would have gotten it back by now. And look, it's a very unpopular and very failed system. You can look at premiums, you can look at the amount of deductions that people can take, and it just has not worked well. And so, we could sit here and let it collapse on its own and then blame the Democrats. That would be the politically astute thing to do. It would be morally wrong. When you see a system that's failing and millions of Americans are involved in it, you try and fix it. That's what we're trying to do. We're midway through the process. We'll see where we end up.
Congressman, let's talk about the Republican win in Montana for the open House seat. Despite the fact that the candidate was charged with assault, Greg Gianforte won there last night. And just moments ago, President Trump in Sicily responded to this. Let me play it for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you could hear that, Congressman, but apropos of nothing, in front of a press gaggle, he said, "Great win in Montana." Is that all we take away from this incident?
No, I mean, obviously, to Mr. Gianta's, credit, he apologized fully and forthrightly last night at his own watch party. That's a hard thing to do. He made a bad mistake. There's no doubt about it. I was very critical of the action. I don't think there's an excuse for it. He's got to face legal consequences for it. But look, you begin to make amends by taking responsibility and making an apology. He did that last night. I certainly accepted that was a difficult thing to do. In terms of the race itself, look, you'd rather win than lose. And that's, had we lost, there would be a lot of people obviously blaming the candidate today, but others trying to draw larger conclusions from a single special election about our prospects for 2018. So I'm glad he apologized. That was the right thing to do. I'm sorry that he engaged in the actions that he did, and I'm glad that he's sorry as well. And but I'd rather, again, politically win the race than lose.
But is it problematic now that he's won that you will have a colleague who is facing assault charges?
Well, it's certainly something that he's going to have to deal with, and that I know he would prefer not to. That's why I'm sure he apologized last night. So we'll just let the legal, system take its course, and he's going to have to deal with that. And it's an unfortunate incident. Look, there's no excusing it. There's no defending it. But he did win the election, and I think the election was fought largely on his views, and his opponent's views were dramatically different. So from our standpoint, we won the election on the issues, not on the candidate behavior, obviously.
But last, Congressman, do you think there's something larger going on here? Are you seeing more hostility towards the press? Do you think that the vitriol, or at least the heated rhetoric about the press, is taking a toll?
Well, first of all, I think we always vitriol and heated rhetoric about the press we have since the very beginning of the republic. Politicians don't like press scrutiny. They never have, and they never will. But it's absolutely indispensable to an open and free democracy. I mean, you have to have an exchange of views. And look, the press, I don't consider them non-biased or, without prejudice, because they have points of view, and we have multiple, different entities that express it. But by and large, they do a good job. They keep the American people well informed. And, sunlight's the best antidote or disinfectant for any kind of problem in the political system. So, again, I applaud them for what they do, and we need a vigorous press. So, and I'm glad reporters go out there and ask tough questions. That's fair enough. That's what politicians are supposed to respond to.
We appreciate that perspective. Congressman Tom Cole, thank you.